Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for coming to our CSIG-VIS International Lecture Series. I'm Chongke from Tianjin University. This series aims to bring together visualization researchers to share their recent work, exchange ideas, and educate newcomers. It is sponsored by the Technical Committee on Visualization and Visual Analytics of China Society of Image and Graphics. So firstly, let us welcome the director, Professor Ruige, give us an opening talk.
各位大家好 ，Welcome everyone. So before we start today our international lecture series, so let me give a brief introduction about our technical committee and also the background and how we initiate this program. So for our visualization and visual analytics special technical committee, 也是我们的可视化与可视分析专业会，我们是在2017年成立。那当时呢，我们最开始我们有这个将近100位这个委员，当经过这么一些发展，我们已经有很多的这个成员，我们也有很多国内的会议。那我们的期望呢，我们是希望在这里面建设一个这样的学术平台。So the background here, we started from 2017. And now we have almost 20 committee members. So every year we have all the conference. And one of the major mission of our technical committee is to establish academic like kind of exchange platform. So we have annual conference. And due to the COVID-19, it's very difficult for us to have international travel. However, we want to still keep a tight connection with our international colleagues. So this is how our people, we want to start this special lecture series for this international talk. So actually we started this idea from last year, and this year, February 6th, so we officially start this work. So we have a few group members. So in this, our organizers, including Professor Chongke Bi from Tianjin University, and Zheng Wei is in Shenzhen. I think he is now in Hong Kong, USC at Guangzhou, and also Tao Jun from Sun Yat-sen University, and Professor Ruige from Syracuse University is also gonna give us a lecture today, and Professor Yun from Suzhou, and Liu Le from which university? And Xigongda is let's me how to say is a Northwest Polytech University, and also Zhang Men from Dongbei Northwest University. Okay, so. So first, let's thank all our committee members for the hard working. And we have, for the first half year, we already decided this 7 lectures. So starting from tonight, and almost every 2 weeks, we have different people from different background and give different lectures. We will continue this talk series from today, and next half a year, we also have several lecture people already confirmed, and we're gonna release more information later. So let me just conclude this very brief start, and let me hand over to Professor Chongke for chairing the lecture. And by the way, I would also like to mention the first lecture actually is sponsored by Tianjin University by Chongke Bi. So okay, thank you, Professor Chongke. So let me hand over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Ruige. Now I will simply introduce our first lecture, Professor Rebecca Ruige. Professor Xu teaches computer arts as a professor in College of Visual and Performing Arts at Syracuse University. Her artwork and research interests include artist data visualization, experimental animation, visual music, interactive installations, digital performance, and VR. Her recent works has appeared at CSIG-VIS art programs, SIGGRAPH and SIGGRAPH Asia Art Gallery, ISEA Arts Electronic Museum of Contemporary Art, Italy, Los Angeles Center for Digital Art, USA, Fire Electronic Language International Festival, Brazil, TechFest Technical Arts Exhibition, India, Colloquium Culture and Digitalization, Switzerland, CYNET Art, Germany, International Digital Art Exhibition, China. Professor Xu served on the Media Arts Advisory Panel for the U.S. National Endowment for the Arts. She was the co-founder of China-VIS Conference Arts Program and the co-founder of 2019-2020 IEEE Pacific VIS Visual Storytelling Contest. Currently, Professor Xu is the exhibition chair of 2021 IEEE VIS Arts Program and serves on the executive committee for the Association of Chinese Artists in American Academia. Today, Professor Xu's talk is from Utilitarian to Sublime, the exploration in representing data. Now, let us welcome Professor Xu to give us talk.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Bi, for wonderful introduction, and thank you, Professor Yuan, for the beginning remark. I'm very glad to be here to give this talk. So let's begin. I'm going to share my screen. Today's topic is from utilitarian to sublime, the exploration in presenting data. All right, this is a scale. I want to get right to it because it pretty much shows in general where in the field of visualization and the data art, where things right now, where they landed. So on the left side, we see scientific visualization, or some people like to call it programmatic visualization. And then on the right side, we see artistic visualization and the data art. And in between, there's a information visualization and the infographics. And underneath, on the left, we have a utilitarian, and on the right, we have a sublime. So utilitarian type of visualization or pragmatic type of visualization, usually they are readable, recognizable, versus on the other side, the data art and artistic visualization, sometimes it's hard to read and it's hard to recognize. Okay. All right. And most of my work would fall pretty much under artistic visualization and the data art. Sometimes I do shift to the left a little bit. Another thing I want to say about this skill would be, well, it is a skill. So it doesn't mean, let's say, on the utilitarian side, this type of visualization, there's no sublime. Okay, there's still sublime there. But the well, the goal is different. So the utilitarian focus more on the practical goal, versus on the right side, it's the same thing. When we talk about the data art, you cannot see there's no utilitarian side to the data art. There's a skill. We would talk about usability. We would talk about the effectiveness of a certain message being passed through. So there are still a little bit of utilitarian there, but the main focus would be sublime. What is really quickly, what is a utilitarian? Okay. It's well, pretty straightforward. It's work designed to be useful or practical rather than attractive. In fact, I would a little bit disagree with the word attractive here. I think it's more about aesthetic concern. So the utilitarian would be work designed to be useful, practical, but doesn't concern too much about the aesthetic side of things. The focus would be on Sublime. So what is the Sublime? Sublime is a concept from aesthetics. And usually it describes a quality of greatness that inspires awe and wonder. They are also often much larger than we are, more beautiful, around for longer. Many things in nature are sublime, like mountains, waterfalls. They naturally has the sublime quality. We as a human like to experience these things because they inspire this feeling in us. It's easy to be cynical about them today and call them kitsch, but they are the real thing. They are the things that deep down inside we, the human, admire, and sometimes we even daydreaming about it. Today, the word is used for, I would say, most ordinary reasons. For sublime, you can say for sublime tennis shot or sublime evening. But in the history, particularly in the history of art, the idea has much deeper meanings, point to the height of something truly extraordinary. Which is an ideal that artists have long pursued. Throughout history, artists has tried to translate that sublime feeling from the nature onto their canvas, into their work. And so that's why landscape painting is a quite popular, quite common art form in various cultures, as you can see here. A similar experience is that a piece of art can offer. Something you can look at and wonder without it handing you an answer or conclusion. Most art don't give you an answer. They ask a question, but they don't give you an answer. Okay? Something that has a certain beauty about it, even it is not primarily beautiful. Art is not about beautiful. Something that gives you the idea there's something deeper hidden within it, something you can't quite get to. I'm going to mute my computer a little bit because I have the notification keep going on. All right. Fast forward to contemporary art and particular data art. That feeling of sublime, that quality of sublime has been maintained in many of the data-related artwork. This is one of the simple example. Okay, in this work, over 888,000 ceramic poppies. They are planted outside the London Tower to commemorate the fallen soldiers in World War I, which is done by the artists Paul Cummings and Tom Piper. The poppies encircle the iconic landmark, create not only a very spectacular display visible from around the tower, but also a location for personal reflection. as you can see, people can actually walk into this artwork and be surrounded by all those red puppies. Yeah. The scale of the installation intends to reflect the magnitude of such important centenary, creating a powerful visual commemoration. Yeah. And so to sum up, this is a visualization of that one number, okay? And but it's visualized by individual object, thus it creates a larger scale. So even one number can be visualized in a very powerful form. All right. On the contrary, this one has a much more complex data. This is a work called The Melting Memory by Ruige. You probably saw it somewhere already. This work is quite popular, I think, the last year or last couple years. It combines data painting, light projections, and augmented data sculpture to visibly demonstrate how the brain recalls memory. So this is a gigantic installation, okay, and the data is actually where, okay, it's the EGG data, and the artist conducted experiment at the lab in UC San Francisco. So basically, the data measure the change in brainwave activity and provide evidence of how the brain functions over time. This data set constitutes the building block for the unique algorithm that artists need for the multi-dimensional visual structure on display. So this work, it starts with the data. However, there's multiple layers built on it, so it's not a simple direct reflect of the representation of that those data, but rather there's it's being worked on, being represented in different formats, and with the help of AI in this project, and also multiple presentation means. And I think I have a little animation to show. Yeah. So this shows you, this little clip shows you the work in action in the gallery space. Another example I have here is called Together by Kirill Benzi. And this work visualize the hierarchical position of employee in the Harvest group, and it has 17,201 nodes in each, start from the CEO all the way down to each of their employees. So the Harvest group is one of the top leading communication group in the world that has a presence in more than 100 countries. And this one is mine. I did a few years back. It's called the Perpetual Flow. The work is use the data of federal spending. So this is from a series which consists of all United States, all the states, and it created this organic flow of intermingled 3D units. And they are used to represent the profile of federal spending of each state, loosely resemble the idea of the money flow. You can see some of those forms. For example, they are representative. For example, the cubes for housing, and the ribbons here, they are the house related expense. And this one, we are looking at the state of Massachusetts. Come back to this graph. Again, as the example I showed you, the artistic visualization and the data art, mostly they still, even in data art, they still occupies certain sublime quality. And it's you could just call it this wow factor. It's something when you look at them, you are surprised, but at the same time you are in a little bit of shock. So it's a mixed feeling, but it's something you can see in many of the artwork. So where should a project land on this scale? There are two things we need to concern. One is the goal, your project goal. And then the second would be the audience. And they're kind of related, right? So if it's a artistic visualization work or data art work, in general, their audience is the general public, versus if it's a scientific visualization, then their audience could be the expert in the field that don't necessarily geared towards the general public. All right. So next, I'm going to talk about 3 of the projects I've done in recent years, and then they will range from a little bit, well, you'll see, a little bit more information design geared towards completely data art. So let's get started. The first project is Visual Squares. This is a project I collaborated with Beijing University Visualization and Visual Analytics Lab, Professor Yuan's group. This project was initially published in February 2020, shortly after the COVID broke out in Wuhan. At the time, there was tremendous fear in the Chinese public caused by this newly discovered and highly infectious disease. The goal for this project is to, well, provide understanding of overall situation in each region and lessen fear and anxiety caused by the sharply rising of cases and the growing number of deaths. And the third one, possibly supply a positive outlook for the time being. And well, of course, the target audience for this one would be the general public. Here are a few of the designs, design sketches and design layout and well definitions throughout the process. Within each of the within each of the square, we brought people's attention to the fatality rate and the cure rate of COVID. The fact was that the death rate of this virus was much lower than SARS. Even though the number of acute cases was often overlooked as people were overwhelmed by the total number of the cases. Here are the 2 designs for the final color scheme. At the time, media reporting of the outbreak has put Wuhan on top of this health crisis and divided China into Wuhan and the rest of China. So the public was deeply concerned and many places become hostile against the people, business, and good related to Wuhan. We believe it is important to treat every region equally in our design to minimize such discrimination. This one, it's even though it looked like a variation of a tree map, but it's actually inspired by the periodic table of elements. We decided to use a matrix of square with each square to represent a province in China. We arranged the province according to their approximate geographical locations. Wuhan naturally found its place under Hubei, and it was not being treated different from other cities. Here are a few more designs. Of course, we decided not to use them for various reasons, but you can see some of them, they do lean towards well, more of the art side, even though they're harder to read than some of the others. They are more on the information design side. We hope this project has made some positive influence on the public at the time by allowing people to see the light at the end of the tunnel. So the color uses here with the green, it's we carefully choose the color because we want to give people the hope. And the black, of course, represents the death, but it's only centered because it's a small area. It's only appear on the center for a little bit. This is if we talk about the visualization, everybody knows the area we're talking about, the size of the area, and it's not the most accurate channel to present the data. However, we want to use that little bit of perception here, and I wouldn't say exaggerate, but increase the power of the cute case. In another word, increase the power of the green. So make the green pop up further from the background. So make people feel a little bit more positive about the whole situation. So that's intentionally done. Okay, and that's the part moved away from the utilitarian purpose of visualization, but it's more into the well, I wouldn't say sublime yet, but it's more into the expression, artistic expression direction. Moving on to next project. It's called Almana's 7 Days in April. The goal here is to explore creative ways of visualizing bird migration data and help public better comprehend the information and possibly rethink our relationship with nature. Again, the audience is general public. The migration of the bird has always been a fascinating subject to humans. No other group of animals is as mobile as the birds are. Their ability to fly enable them to move around in large home range and to undertake their extended migration or migratory journey. This project is our attempt to represent one of those journeys with data-driven visuals and poems. All right, let's talk about the bird. Introducing our bird, Almana. So Almana is the bird's name. It's for real. It's not a name I made up. It's the bird's name. The bird is a female juvenile Hooligan's gull. So basically, it's a one type of seagull. She flew from a South Arabian Peninsula to North Asia this past April, covering a very impressive 2,890 miles in just 7 days without stopping. Okay, so this is the whole trip. And she wears a tracker, a debut bird tracker. So with that tracker, we were able to collect information. Let's see. We were able to collect information of her journey, such as location, temperature, humidity, air pressure, light intensity, energy level, and etc. We then translate the data into modern haiku style poems and a series of stylized map images. So for this one, the thinking is, besides visualize, what else can we do with this data? So the poetry would be the template for this project. This is the simple diagram to basically show how we did this. Haiku requires a total of 17 syllables. Some of you might know this. And the 17 syllables appear in 3 lines. We decide to associate these 3 lines with the 3 principles of ancient philosophy, of course, heaven, earth, and human being. Just to express the view of how human life and the society could be integrated with the order of the nature world. For instance, to generate the first line of haiku, a seasonal, which is usually it's a seasonal phrase, we translate the information of weather and season into descriptive words such as sunlight, warm, spring, and then form the line following the linguistic rule of haiku. Then the second line is linked to location, landscape, and light intensity. And the third one is about air pressure, the speed, and Almana's actually the energy level, which is closely impacted by all the things above. The poem composition is programmed using Python and the text block, which is developed based on the natural language processing library. We use the same-use pronouncing library to count the syllables and the Markov chain to select a suitable word to build the poem. Then the collection of the poem was curated by the team, and which including we have the help. We are very lucky to have a help of a Pulitzer winner poet, Bruce Smith, on board to help us actually select the poem. So the last part of this whole process was somehow a little bit handmade because we handpicked the poem to present. We do have all the poems available, but we only present the best one, of course. So. All right, the visual style was inspired by traditional East Asian landscape painting, which in measurable distance were conveyed through the use of blurred outlines, mountain contours disappearing in the mist, and a very impressionistic treatment of a natural phenomena. To us, the vast distance that Almana traveled and her likely view of the landscape show very natural connection with this visual style. The image are rendered from the bird's perspective, specifically for each point along the migration path. Okay, so this is the path. It's still a little bit left there intentionally. For each point along the migration path, a visible radius is determined according to the altitude information. So the lower the birds are, the smaller the area we will see, the higher the birds in the air, and then the broader field we will see. And only in the area within are transferred to the final output. the base color of each of the work is chosen from the color palette in the satellite map. We use processing to create strokes in a pointillism style, hope to achieve a painterly and poetic feeling similar to the East Asian landscape painting. Such painting were often accompanied by poems following the same position. We combine the poems and the map images together. And here are the results. And this is another one. And in this area, apparently there's quite a bit of green. So that's the versus this one is more of the desert area. So this is the so it has plantation around. So that's the green. And this one closely related to there's a lot of water in the area. Yeah. And some of the examples. Interesting about this one, you see the bird pass. The bird apparently stay here for whatever reason, maybe for to get in the food. So the birds stayed here for quite a while. So thus we see the pass comes back and forth. Okay, this is a series of this. And this work was exhibited in last year's IEEE arts program. And the purpose of this project is to explore creative ways to visualize bird migration data. Like I said, to help public better comprehend the information and possibly rethink our relationship with the nature. Okay. And the project can be seen here. So that's the second project. As you can see, we are moving away from a pure utilitarian, and there's a lot of things has been outside the visualization field. I wouldn't call it visualization anymore, particular to the poem, because it's basically what I did was try to convert the data, try to represent the data in other type of form. In this case, it's poetry. All right. Last project. This project would be, well, the furthest from a visualization. It is still a visualization, but it's a further in comparison with the other two. Okay. It's a visual music project. So the goal for this one is to, well, represent a physical, emotional journey that after trauma. Okay, so it's about inside one's body and also inside of one's mind. Visual music. This is called visual music because it's based on a music piece. Okay. And before we go any further, I think I need to give a little prime about what is visual music. Okay, visual music, in short, is artistic interpretation of music versus what we usually see. This type of work is a music visualizer. Okay, so music visualizer is a literal translation of the music. So if there's a beat, you see something change. If there's a wave change, a sound wave, the volume change, and then you see something getting bigger. So it's a very literal one-to-one correspondence there. Visual music, on the other side, it's not about that. It's well, first of all, the inspiration of visual music comes from synesthesia, which is a condition some people have. and that allow them to see, seeing music, for example. So they can inside hear music, they can see music. I know quite a few people who has ability when they hear music, they see things. Okay, so they see different colors, they see different pattern. And so the term for this condition is called synesthesia. And that a long time ago, that inspired many artists to start work in this direction. So basically, they try to represent music in some way. So it started in modern time. It started in 1960s, 70s. And such artists like Kandinsky and O'Keeffe, they are the ones who practice the music painting or music drawing at the time. Okay? So the visual music focus is on interplay of music and the visual. And so there's a quote, I think I can explain the visual music quite well. Music visualizer that merely map the most elemental characteristic of one sensory mode to another create at best a naive and predictable synesthesia. The journey of emotions that much music can awaken in an audience does not automatically emerge when one characteristic, for example, pitch, is mapped to a characteristic in another sense, color, for example. Okay. So basically the visual and the auditory information are processed by different parts of our brain. So one characteristic of the music cannot be simply mapped directly to a visual sense, so to another sense. So there's no direct link there. So how do you build that connection? For me, visual music happens through carefully controlled timing, movement, rhythm, and choreographic of a visual element. And those visual elements are linked with the music patterns. Sometimes, oftentimes inside the one-to-one correspondence, I will purposefully emphasize on neglecting certain aspects of the music signal. Then once I do that, so the image would arrive as a visual counterpoint of the music, thus form an interplay of the visual and the music. So this interplay would build novel texture into the artistic rendering and add actual dimensions to the conversations. So it's a conversation between an artist and a musician in a way. All right, enough prime. Now let's move into the project. So this is a simple diagram to show the overall process in a way. Okay? So all the yellow one on the right, those are the visual elements was controlled. Okay? And the green element come from music directly, from the, I should say from audio directly, because the audio include the soundscape, and also there's instrument and there's vocal. And all this, they would go through analysis and then feed the signal into various parameters. The blue layers are the artistic layers. So we're talking about the musical timbre and the emotions, and we're talking about expressive characteristic study into the music. What's the mode of the music? Is there something changed at this moment? So it's the blue part is the human touch of the project. It's the artistic human touch of the project, which is also the part that distinguish visual music from a music visualizer. Because the green part to the yellow part can be pretty much achieved automatically, but the adjustment and the mood of the music was done for this project manually, and it's the result is linked to the visual as well. just kind of give you idea of how the visual is constructed. I wouldn't get in too much technical detail of this. But this project was done with GLSL, particularly GLSL with shader toy. GLSL is OpenGL shading language. With the GLSL programming, we model the scene with a remarching algorithm, means to render the graphic directly with the line. Remarching is a term in comparison with retracing, because when you create a 3D object, most time, especially for example, if you use a software like Maya, if you use Arnold renderer, then the render is what we're doing is using retracing, versus with the remarching is a much faster way to generate 3D forms. Another example would be Dolman working with FBM. So it's basically we're talking about the noise. So how the noise would change the shape, as you can see here. Excuse me. This diagram goes in a little deeper about the sound attribute, how the sound attribute linked to the visual attribute. Oh, I forgot to say a little bit about the creation of the music. The music is composed by a composer, Cecilia Wu, who teaches at Colorado University. The Tibetan soundscape you're gonna hear, it was recorded on site in the summer of 2019 during a spiritual field trip. It's the end of the Tibetan soundscape is the glue of the sound of the electronic and acoustic instrument. So there are also other, as the ones I list here, their bell sound, their female vocal, and there's also industrial voice being added to the soundscape. So overall, it has we can call it experimental music to the most extent. Okay. And they are linked to all those different variables to control the visual. For example, the scales, the noise scale, as you can see from the image on the left side to the right side. So there's more noise, and you can see the form change. And this is the the channel of displacement. It was linked to the female vocal and also the industrial noise. So thus it changed from this into completely deformed. The color and texture mixing, it was linked to to a lot of things. The female vocal, the bell sound, to name a few. The visual of this piece is mostly abstract, but with reference to the real world. It evolves in color, form, and motion following the musical development, echoing the sensation and enrich it with further emotional power. So as you can see, the color change throughout the piece. So it's an indication of different emotional states the person is in, or the body is in, or the mind is in. And then there's a stage of a quiet down. So of course, we have some quiet color palette there as well. All right, I do have a clip which I would like to play, but I think first I need to stop share and reshare again to make sure the audio works correctly. All right, this is the first part. This whole piece is 7.5 minutes. And what I'm playing here would be the partial, it's a small clip of the, kind of leaning towards the beginning parts till the middle part. Yeah. All right, here we go. All right. Escape. Okay. Well, the one last thing I want to say about that project. Okay, so that project is a very interactive collaboration process with the musician. So when we started working on this project together, she hasn't taken the trip yet. So thus we had a brief idea. And so she kind of have a idea what's needed for the project. And then so she, after she come back, the process of her composing and the process of me designing the visuals happen at the same time. And we exchange ideas on both fronts constantly. The result, even though we still have a different interpretation in terms of how the music is structured and how the visual is structured, but both of us, I think, are satisfied with the outcome of the project. So just want to mention that. Okay, so those are the 3 projects I would like to share. As you can see, they range from a somewhat here from the kind of info graphics, information design, and all the way to completely data art. The Sublime, you can see, and I hope you can see, you can feel in some of my work. And also I want to see the utilitarian, in another word, some people call it, anti-sublime. I think Warren Sack is the one called the anti-sublime. And another word would be, anti-sublime is user friendliness. So the utilitarian is about practical, it's about user friendly, versus the Sublime is not so much about the user friendly. It's more about the message we're trying to send. It's more about this greatness we try to show. Not all art, most of the art, I would say, possess a certain degree of Sublime. But of course, there's not all art have very strong Sublime. Some art are easier to understand than others. For example, if we look at the comic, so comic art are considered easy art. They are very easy to understand. They communicate pretty well, but on the at the same time, there's not so much Sublime to it. All right. I also want to, the last thing I want to do is I want to comment on the role of artistic visualization and data art. For me, this field is about experimentation and exploration. So the contribution to the field would be, exactly the exploration we do, because such experiments provide the possibilities to represent data in different ways than the current norms. Some of those forms might not be easily understood at the time being, but in the future, it does provide a variety of things can be considered for the field. So the experimentation and exploration is the value for this field. And to the public, I would say artistic visualization and the data art make the audience look at the data from different angle. It will attract them with different means rather than the traditional visualization charts, right? And it definitely has a visually, it would more appealing. It will attract the audience easier, and then it will hopefully make the audience think and look at the data, look at the information from a different way. All right, that concludes my presentation today. So I'll hand it back to Professor Bi.
Yes, thank you very much for the talk. Here I have several questions from the audience. I will read for them. The first one, from my understanding, sometimes arts are good at expressing emotions, feelings, and even philosophy that are difficult to be explicitly described or formulated. Can this functionality be utilized in visualization to represent complex data? For example, data uncertainty. If yes, how?
Very good question. It's about the balance. Well, Okay, let's pull back a little bit. First of all, it's it depends on your goal and depend on your audience. So, and then once you decide on that, then you can consider, okay, how much you want to focus on express the ideas, the message, the uncertainty you were talking about, and how much you want it to represent accurately represent the information. So it's really it's a balance point, and I think it's definitely possible. But along the way, for example, if you want to use the Sublime, okay, the quality of Sublime to express the certainty, okay, of the such data set, then you have to be willing to let go of some of the user friendliness. So it's your visualization won't be so easy to be read by a general audience. And but at the same time, you're gonna be able to utilize the Sublime power and to achieve the uncertainty feeling. So the feeling you can achieve, that it's emotional, but it's hard to measure. So you cannot measure that feeling. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, thank you very much. The second one, CSIG-VIS is more on the utilitarian side in one of your slides. Is it possible that arts can be applied to CSIG-VIS? If so, what will be the scenario and how the artists and CSIG-VIS researchers should work together?
All right. Well, I know that question is coming. The scientific visualization. First of all, art and science, we are two sides of one coin. So we can talk about the science in aesthetics, and we can talk about aesthetics in science. So so it's two sides of things. And the reason I put it on utilitarian side is because, okay, the scientific VIS, it has very clear purpose. It's very practical. And so we visualize this in order to demonstrate this or to show this structure. So it's very goal oriented and focus on practical things. So that's why it's all the way on the left side. But like I said, that doesn't mean the scientific visualization cannot have a Sublime quality. In fact, many scientific visualizations, they're beautiful, they're wonderful. The moment you see them and you have this awe feeling. I hate to say it, but even the image I used on that graph is the coronavirus, right? It's the 3D modeling. It has a beauty in it, and when you look at it, it's not it's not horrible, and it doesn't trigger that horror feeling in you, but instead there's a teeny tiny bit of wonder in place, and that's a small example. But in the art field, there are many. In the science field, there are many scientists producing beautiful, visualization work. Okay, and many of the scientists, in fact, go one step further, work with the artist and the designer to make their visualization work even has more of the Sublime quality. One of my colleagues, she's working with a biologist to produce installation based on I think it's some sort of a gene. I don't know the detail of the project, but some of the beautiful structure, okay, digital structure were created because of that. So I think a scientist in general works very well with artists together. More so than, for example, engineer. So engineer working with artists, It's sometimes there are communication issues because the way of thinking is different. And the engineer is all about problem problem solving, all about construction, all about one step at a time to achieve a goal. And versus the scientific field, let's say scientists and artists, we are about discover things. We are about breaking rules, breaking boundaries to experiment, to explore. So we have a lot of more of a commonality. All right.
For this question, actually, my student always ask me, I can do simulation, I can do rendering, but I know nothing about design. So what they should learn to make a good design for their data? Do you have any suggestion?
For science students, I would suggest go take some like a very basic design classes, or read some books, or read online a little bit. You don't need to go very deep in terms of design. I think the two areas they should cover is one is color, because color is the is the most obvious thing. It's in this world, it's the first thing people would notice. So definitely have them study color a little bit, and at least understand the color well. Yeah, so there's a there's like what color works with what color. So don't use a rainbow color. And there's certain rules in visualization. For example, okay, you do not want to use more than 7 colors in your visualization, things like that. So there's things out there, but I would say color is one. And the second thing people oftentimes forget is about the type. Type is the font type. So basically we're talking about the usage of the font. So what type of font is easy to read, and then what size they should be using. So, and when you label, like for example, a bar chart, what type of label you should use, and the title, what type of font type should be. So there is certain general rule is out there, and I think that's the basic they need to get. I don't think they need to get in very deep into it. But I think that would be a very good start. In terms of, okay, now come back, one more thing I want to say about the color. If they do have a problem picking up the color palette, there are tools out there that they can utilize. We'll give them a certain already made color palette they can pick. And I also have a little small trick is you can pick your favorite visual artist artwork, and then utilize those two. And then even Photoshop can do that. You can pick the color out from your favorite artwork. Of course, you have to evaluate because not all color palette works for your purpose of visualization. So it's not all harmonic color will work well for visualization. You still have to consider is there certain data because using this color will overpower all the other data. So is that what you want to do? That might be, but if it's not, then you probably should consider change the color. So there are certain general rules out there, and just study a little bit. And another thing I would say is I would encourage them to work with the designer if it's possible. So because that's the best way to learn. You learn from each other, and so they know that then once they go through the process working with the design student, so they have a basic sense of what's considered from a design perspective, and that would help a lot as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Also, we have an artist, the researcher that have a question. Her question is, data visualization has provided many possibilities for artistic exploration. But on the other hand, do you think that the expressiveness of art has been restricted or imprisoned by data?
I think this is also related to balance. Artist and designer, I should say, we are a group of people very sensible, okay, very sensitive to the environment we live in, okay. And the current time is time of data, it's the time of information. Thus, it's only natural for us to use data as a material, just like in the past we use oil paint, right? Or we use watercolors, or whatever available, or we use camera, we use we make film. So whatever technology available, artists is always among the first group to explore how to use that new technology. And in this case, would be, today we're talking about data, we're talking about AI, we're talking about mixed reality. So, we're talking about all those technical fronts. So we are talking about using data and the technology as the base to create our artwork. Well, in terms of the balance, where you find, there's no general rule. It's really dependent. If you feel very strong about artistic expression, if you feel the message is the most important thing, then still focus, do whatever you need to focus on that side. Okay. But on the other side, if you do want people communicate to the general public, then maybe you should restrict the expressive side and focus a little bit more on the utilitarian side of things. So that's the first project I showed, the Visual Square project. Honestly, it has the artistic quality to it, but it's more of a design for me. It's more of a design work than artwork. Okay, it's because of it largely lack of that sublime quality, but that's what I do. Okay, so your work can be a range of can have a wide range. It depends on your goal, depends on your audience, and then you decide where you should land your project.
Okay, thank you very much. We have a lot of questions. So the next one about the music. There are several questions I will ask you together. What are the specific application scenarios of visual music? And another one is there any specific use for the interaction between music and visualization? It's like nearly the same question.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite get the question. Is the question like is a visual music considered visualization?
Yes. I will repeat. What are the specific application scenarios of visual music?
Application. Visual music itself is an application. Then I'm sorry if I don't quite get the question. Okay, visual music is this genre. It's considered a type of art form, or it's a genre. It's existing since 1950s. Where people started create visual music. Well, in terms of time-based, is existing in 1950s. The music painting is even earlier, and it's considered many different things. It's considered experimental animation. It's considered experimental film, and all it's just visual music. It itself is a genre. And it's not necessary you can, let's see, they're exhibits in just like other type of work. So they exhibit in art galleries, museums, and you see them at film festivals. There's usually in the experimental genre, you would see them. And very rarely you see them, let's see, where you see music, like a music visualization type of work. So it's more of the music visualizer type of places. Nowadays, more and more you can see the visual music work as a public art. So in public space, because the format, many of them, they are abstract. So in a way, I think it's perceived well in public space. So that's why I think nowadays we can see more of the visual music in public space. I hope that's the application of visual music.
Maybe another what is the purpose of visual music? Why we need to visualize music in that way beyond the artistic purpose?
Beyond the artist purpose. Okay. This is so visual music is like other type of visualization. It's about to represent information from one format into another, right? To convert information from one format to another. So in this case is we convert the visual, the music information into a visual. And we even go further with visual music. The fun is we even go further. It's not a one-to-one conversion, but rather, okay, during this process, we make the visual play with the audio together. So this whole experience. So when you look at a visual music project, you are not just listening to music, you are not just seeing the visual, but it's more of the audio visual experience as a whole. So it's a comprehensive experience. It's a simplified version of let's say immersive experience. We nowadays we talk a lot about immersive experience, right? So that means put yourself into that environment. So all your sensors get accessed. And in the case of visual music, it's a simple version. It's a simplified version of that. Because it's it has a long history, so it only deal with the two senses. It only deal with the visual and audio, but we're dealing with those two senses together in visual music, and they have a interesting interplay within them, and it's not a one-to-one. So that's what's interesting. For example, when you look at a visual music piece, sometimes you hear there's change in the music, but there's nothing changed on visual. Sometimes it's a vice versa. You see a lot of change in visual, but you're not hearing it. So that makes your brain actually you have to work between music and visual. And because a simple example would be, let's say in film, okay, you see action, and then you also hear people talk about action. So that will be duplicated information. So you don't want to duplicate the information. In visual music, it's the same thing. You don't necessarily want a visual and the music duplicate each other all the time. But rather you want them to have this interesting relationship. So they exist on their own, but when they're together, they form this something bigger, something more, I wouldn't say pleasant, something more powerful.
Okay, thank you very much. I have a the last question. There are so many questions, so I will select the last question. Why sound-with is more utilitarian than infrared? In your slide, sound-with is in the left, and infrared.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, okay. Let me think. Why? Why? I think my way of thinking, because I do data art, right? So I do artistic visualization. So I move kind of backward, not backward. I move from the right side to the left side, right? So artistic visualization, and naturally for me would connect to informative design. Yeah. So and the informative design, then that, you know, if we divide, there's a infographics. So that's like a communication designer, graphic designer usually do. So it's more of the design appeal versus the information visualization, and it would be has more of the science feel to it. And then from that point, I naturally move into scientific visualization. I think that's my thinking. My thinking process, and I would I think because that's the way I placed them. I do think it's possible to, let's say, if we talk about absolute order between scientific visualization and information visualization, you could switch them. Okay, the only thing is in my sequence, it will be scientific visualization with infographics. It will have a disconnection. So that's the whole thing. An easy way to understand, I probably should instead list them out. I should just say it's a pragmatic visualization. So pragmatic visualization on the left side, right above utilitarian, and then artistic visualization and the Sublime on the right side, and forget about all the divisions in the middle. I think that's probably easier to understand.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Due to the time limitation, so today Professor Xu's talk is to hear. So thank you very much again. Our next talk will be held on 19 o'clock, October 14th. The talk is from Professor Mike of ETS, and it will be hosted by Professor Siming Chen from Fudan University. His talk is virtual programming applying to information visualization, games, simulation, and content creation. Finally, if you want to host a professor in 2022 years, you can contact us using this email address or WeChat. So thank you very much. Today, the talk is over. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.